Right, so as America now reels from the prospect of having re-elected the big orange man baby Donald Trump to the White House, punishing Kamala Harris's refusal to take Israel to task, as Joe Biden should have done beforehand, it's a consequence that Keir Starmer's Labour really ought to be taking note of, because Gaza decided who won the presidency over there, and Gaza is equally as big of an issue over here in the UK as well. You only had to look at last Friday's protest outside the residence of the Israeli ambassador to the UK, Tzipi Hotovely, who, if there was any justice in the world, should have been put on a plane back to Tel Aviv months ago, yet instead remains here and remains a firm photographic mainstay amongst Starmer's politicians. We've seen numerous examples now of people being arrested for holding pro-Palestine and anti-Israel views. We've seen journalists targeted in particular, but on the occasion of this protest, we saw the arrest of a Jewish academic, Haim Bresheeth, who actually grew up in Israel, was the son of Holocaust survivors, arrested. But more sinister than even that story is in and of itself, is the video footage has now come out which appears to show the police being directed by a marshal of a pro-Israel counter-demonstration to the National March for Palestine that was held back in September, pointing out people he wanted arrested. So are the Met taking direction from pro-Israel figures now? And was a Jewish academic amongst those perhaps pointed out by somebody the other day as well?
Earlier today, you've made a speech. So you are under arrest and terrorism.
What was a hate
against
speech?
what?
Somebody else probably. Not in this demonstration.
Crazy.
So you don't have to say anything, but no harm, no defence, free on mention, question, something that's
Crazy. You're crazy.
Do so, maybe given evidence.
Drivers who attempt to cause your liberation to exit the new road judge without the new road from camera and looking
I don't understand why you're stopping.
You need to tell him what he's alleged to have said.
Your arrest is we're going to interview you regarding this. It's prevent further harm. So if we can just come out of the way, we're going to go.
What is he alleged to have said?
Have you arrested him, mate?
What is he
take him away.
What is he alleged to have said? What has he said? What has he said? You may have the wrong person.
We don't have
You may have the wrong individual.
Stand back, please. Look, guys, just stand across here so that he can go.
Shame on you!
Stand across
You're
here.
arresting a Jewish man! You're arresting a Jewish man! Shame! Shame! You're arresting a Jewish Israeli man! Shame on you! Shame on you! Anti-Semites of the Met Police!
Right, so the story of what is happening during pro-Palestine and anti-Israel sentiment demonstrations is getting frankly scarier and scarier. That piece of footage you've just seen there was the arrest of Professor Haim Bresheeth, an Israeli Jew, a retired academic now in his 70s, who, following a speech where he called out the genocide outside the residence of the Israeli ambassador, the truly awful Tzipi Hotovely, being committed against the people of Gaza by Israel, the nation he himself grew up in, ended up getting arrested then following alleged charges of having committed a crime under the Terrorism Act of 2000. It later emerging that he had been arrested, the only person arrested notably at that demonstration, and it is notable because he's so globally renowned for his work as a historian, as an author, as a filmmaker, for allegedly supporting a proscribed group. Well, can't I be surprised if he wasn't released the next day without charge? So why did the Met Police arrest him to begin with? What prompted it? Clearly he said nothing of the sort. The grounds he was arrested upon, the Met evidently operating on an arrest first, ask questions later prerogative, it seems, taking the word of someone, somewhere, somebody, possibly somebody within the ambassador's residence even, possibly from a counter-demonstration. There may have been one. I appreciate they are barely noticeable. But most people seem to appreciate that Israel is a genocidal, out-of-control rogue state now, up on charges of a plausible case of genocide, as it is at the World Court, still carrying out daily atrocities across the Middle East, from Gaza to the West Bank to Lebanon to Syria, as those US arms deals keep on rolling in, unlikely to stop now that Donald Trump appears to be entering the White House once again. He was, after all, Benjamin Netanyahu's preferred pick for president. This isn't the guy to fix the situation. Far more likely he will just make matters worse. But at least the pretense that the US administration is sane and civilized will be binned off, and they'll far more readily be seen as the global pariahs in this story that they actually are. Trump did nothing to deal with Israel when he was previously in office. He won't now either. The changing of the presidency changes nothing for the Middle East. But Bresheeth is just the latest victim of the abuse of the appallingly badly worded and unfit for purpose Terrorism Act of 2000, because it is subject to abuse. And boy, are we seeing it being abused now that Keir Starmer, that Zionist without qualification, as he is running the country. We've seen the arrest of Richard Medhurst, journalist, fresh off a plane from the Middle East. His bail now extended to February just to drag out the pain and agony there. There was Sarah Wilkinson. After that, there was Asa Winstanley. Now the terrorism laws of this country are being used to protect Israeli interests, even from speeches being given by esteemed academics. But who shocked him to the police? He said nothing untoward or untrue whatsoever, as borne out by his release the very next day. It was in effect just showboating by the authorities. It gave the Zionists an opportunity to point at pro-Palestine demonstrators and say they're menaces and are breaking the law. It gave some of the papers a story opportunity to smear with when there is zero factual basis for any of it. The Met Police are unlikely to ever tell us, of course, who pointed him out, so to speak. But perhaps they don't need to either, because they may well have questions to answer themselves in an exclusive that was dropped by Squawk Box overnight, complete with nearly 12.5 minutes of footage that is once again bringing into question the reputation of the Met Police. Every minute of that footage is damning, and I would urge you to go to the Squawk Box website and see it all for yourself. I've not replicated it here or any portion of it because it really does need to be seen in its entirety, and it's 12.5 minutes long. It's a bit long from one of my videos. But the article is called Exclusive Video, Zionist Appears to Direct Police on Whom to Arrest During London Gaza March. And as this still shows, this is the guy in question in a high-vis jacket talking and pointing with a police officer, indicating he was some kind of marshal for the counter-demonstration. Again, tiny to the point of insignificance compared to the march, compared to the pro-Palestine demo, as shown behind a gate with the police presence in front of them, because who in their right mind can still support Israel at this point if they aren't being funded to? Well, some people clearly. But it was the marshal walking along the barrier with his phone out, apparently filming people in the Palestine demo, then running to the police, very much pointing out people in the crowd, singling individuals out who he then points to for the police's benefit and showing him presumably a photo or a short video clip of somebody doing something that he clearly didn't like. He wasn't filming for any protected length of time, so he cannot possibly have captured whatever he did in any kind of specific context on his phone. Yet it didn't stop him hurriedly running to report whatever it was that had apparently happened. And the police officer in question, wearing the blue tabard of a liaison officer, then gets on his radio, and this guy, this marshal who is doing anything but actually marshalling, just goes right back to filming people, looking for someone else he can report to the police, presumably. More police show up, and the chap they detain, a rather small, brown-skinned young man with a megaphone, gets pulled out of the demo and taken away. The police absolutely dwarf this poor chap. He has no idea why he's been detained. Being on a loudspeaker and with the chants of the demo already loud, you could hear the people with these above the rest. And you can't hear anything untoward being said, let alone being recordable on this marshal's phone. All of this actually takes place within the first 4 minutes of the video clip. That's how quickly the Met Police jumped to this marshal's say-so. He's supposed to be there marshalling the pro-Israel crowd, not spying on the pro-Palestine demo from his perch behind the barriers, but that was all we saw him doing. We then see him, this chap that the police grabbed, being detained and questioned and possibly searched. We continue to see the marshal as well, still filming the crowd. 12 minutes of footage that seems utterly damning of the Met Police, and how quickly they seemingly stop to act upon the say-so of a pro-Israel marshal, seemingly devoting his time to looking for people he can pick on in the crowd based on scant evidence, yet this was enough for the Met to jump. It's been posited that the marshal may have been an undercover police officer, perhaps, but it's a bit daft to consider that if you think about it, because if you could be undercover, why wouldn't you just be in the crowd itself? This guy is clearly a marshal, and frankly, judging by his actions there, in my view, ought to have been behind the barriers with the rest of the Zionists, and not in a position of power where he can seemingly direct the police as he saw fit, because 4 minutes from report to detention of somebody from that pro-Palestine demo, police did not hang about 1 iota. And this is just yet another in a growing line of cases of the police jumping to act upon people when there's no basis for it. Not only is this a colossal waste of time and public money, but it is an abuse of power, and we've only seen this sudden shift since Starmer took charge of the country and Yvette Cooper took over in the Home Office. The Met Police's reputation has been in tatters for years, and now they seemingly can be deployed on the say-so of Zionists against pro-Palestine voices without any real basis other than a bit of phone footage and context being provided by the person who took it. It didn't matter how many defended the guy detained. Their voices didn't matter. And the optics, 12 minutes of start-to-finish footage of this detention is reprehensible, and it needs to be shared and word gotten out about it because nobody's reporting about it. So do go to the Squawk Box story, the only chap covering this story. Share the heck out of it so more people see this footage and watch it yourself. Because if you still had reservations about everything said of the Met over the last several years, or of the influence pro-Israel voices seem to have in this country, that is 12 minutes of footage that should put those reservations to bed. It's little wonder we're in this position now, though, with politicians such as we have, bought and paid for by the Israel lobby, politicians who can't even admit to a genocide when they see it. David Lammy. We'll get the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watchers to Lammy's done to let the country down this time, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.